On today's Weather Legends, we sit down with meteorologist and licensed pilot Bill Korbel to discuss the importance of thorough and accurate weather information before taking to the skies.
Come fly with me, let's fly away.
Hey everyone, meteorologist Rich Von Owen here, host of Weather Legends, and we have a special edition today. We're going to be talking with longtime meteorologist and licensed pilot here right on Long Island, Bill Korbel. We're going to be talking a little bit about aviation weather, flying a plane, and what it's all about. So, Bill, flying, being in the air, some thoughts.
Yeah, not everybody loves flying as much as I do. You know, there are a lot of very apprehensive people. I just came back from Florida, and you can see that there were some people who were rather nervous about the whole thing. And a lot of that, I think, that apprehension comes from lack of knowledge of the weather the plane is flying through. Let's face it, our normal lives are spent at ground level. We only worry about the weather down here. When you're flying, you've got a lot of weather above you that you have to contend with as well to make the flight safe. And that's the goal of every airline, safe flight. And they have a whole team of people that guarantee that, from the pilots who are trained to do this, to air traffic controllers, to dispatchers who help the pilots beforehand put the flight together, and of course meteorologists who provide the weather. So there's a lot that goes into it. I think, Rich, if we talk about those briefly, people will feel a little more comfortable when they get on a plane that it's not just a case of a pilot going, yeah, weather looks okay, let's go.
Yeah. So, Bill, how much training is involved to get like a pilot's license and to go through all that to, be a good pilot? Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, the FAA has specific rules to get a private pilot license. It involves a minimum of 40 hours of instruction in the air before you can get your license. And there are various different licenses above that. Once you get a private license, you can get a commercial license, you get an air transport pilot license, you get an instrument license. It's all very regulated. And if you're interested, look at AOPA.org, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. They have a whole area where they can tell you if you're interested in becoming a pilot for yourself or professionally, they can guide you in the right direction.
So how long have you been flying, Bill? How many years of experience do you have on your own flying in the air?
Would you believe 50 years?
My goodness. Wow.
Long time. Now, that wasn't, again, this is mostly pleasure flying. I was a flight instructor for a little while, but mostly pleasure flying. And there were times when I didn't fly for a number of years for various reasons, but I've been doing it off and on for that long, and I just love it. But as I said, Rich, I know a lot of people approach it differently. So that's what I want to talk about today. Why don't we talk about what pilots need to know before you get on board that plane and they take you someplace.
Okay.
They need a lot more information than we have so they can cope with what Mother Nature throws their way. Let's take it step by step. First, the departure. Again, just looking out the window doesn't do it. You need to know a number of things. Cloud cover, not just whether it's overcast or clear, but how high above the ground are the clouds, because you need a certain amount of clear weather before you can take off for the most part. How about visibility? Horizontal visibility, even for the airlines, is a determining factor whether you're even legal to take off. So you need to know horizontal visibility. Is there any precipitation falling, and will there be at your takeoff time? Is it rain? Is there snow? Is there sleet? And very important are winds. You try to take off as much as possible into the wind, because that shortens your takeoff roll. So you need to know the wind direction and speed. And you combine all these, and there are calculations based upon aircraft weight and temperature and winds, exactly how much ground roll you'll need to take off. You have to make sure there's a long enough runway to do that. So that's taking off. Now, once you get up in the air, there are some more things to go through. You want to look at whether on a climb, where the cloud layers, because clouds are usually bumpy, and it's good to know where they are. If you can get on top of them, it's even better. Especially important, where is severe weather? Where are the thunderstorms? These are scary things we'll talk about in a second. You need to know the winds up there. Let's say you're in an airliner at 35,000 feet and you're going to California, and the average wind If there's no wind, you're going to at 500 miles an hour, you can compute how long it will take you to get to California based on the distance. But if you have a 100 mile an hour headwind, that's going to slow your ground speed down to 400 miles an hour. It's going to take you longer to get there. Do you have enough fuel to do that? On the other hand, if you're going the other way with a 100 mile an hour tailwind, you're going to get there faster and need less fuel. So all this thing has to be calculated. And there's also potential for icing on the ground and aloft, and turbulence, which bothers a lot of people. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So let's see what we have here. Thunderstorms. These are the atmospheric monsters that everyone has to avoid. Why? Because in a thunderstorm, to a varying degree, you will have all the worst aspects of weather. There can be severe to extreme turbulence. There can be icing inside the clouds, inside thunderstorms. Hail. And hail can damage an airplane. That's the last thing you want to do, is get hit by a 1-inch hailstone when you move along through a thunderstorm. Lightning, not so much of a problem in the air. Aircraft are built to shed the lightning, so they're not often bothered so much by lightning, though it's scary if you're a passenger. And of course, some very heavy rain out there as well. All that can make for a very difficult ride. So what do pilots do? One, in the airlines and most twin-engine aircraft and larger, have onboard radar. Just as we have the big radar on the ground to show us at ground level what's going on, up in the airplane, they have the radar on the nose of the aircraft that will show where the storms are, and you can pick a route around them as much as possible and avoid the severe weather that comes with it. And of course, air traffic control can also help the pilots avoid these storms. So that's how they get around thunderstorms. The basic deal with thunderstorms is, and the safest thing is, to stay as far away as possible. The general rule is 5 miles away from an ordinary thunderstorm and 20 miles away from a severe thunderstorm. And it's not so easy to get on top of these either. You would think at 35,000 feet you get above the weather. No. Thunderstorms have built in some cases as high as 70 or 75,000 feet, and no commercial airliner flies up that high. So thunderstorms, you avoid them as much as possible. And generally speaking, if you stay clear of the storm and outside that 5 miles, it's really quite calm, and there isn't a lot of turbulence. Icing is a bit of a potential in clouds. Higher up you go, the colder it gets, and there can be zones where ice will get on the aircraft. Well, jets, airliners, and other aircraft, for the most part, have ways of getting rid of or avoiding the ice. They have heated wings or fluids that make sure the ice doesn't accrue. But you may notice, if you're on a plane in winter, that they stop along the taxi to the runway, and someone comes out in a truck or a large device and starts spraying the wings. You have to remove all ice before a flight, even the minutest amount. Every aircraft, FAA regulation, you cannot fly if there's any ice on the aircraft. Then up in the air, of course, you use the aircraft de-icing systems to keep you safe. Turbulence. Now here's something that gets a lot of people, and probably for pilots, the least thing they worry about, to be perfectly honest. Turbulence certainly can be annoying. Think of it this way. It's like a car on a rough road sometimes. Let's look at you're going along on a bumpy road. If you slow down a bit, the bumps aren't so harsh. If you go faster, they're harder. You may notice when you start to get a little turbulence that the engines may get a little quieter as they slow down the aircraft a bit. There are 3 main types of turbulence, especially in summertime, something called thermal. As the sun hits the earth, the air rises in spots. And as it rises, if the plane is flying through it, it will bump. That's called thermal turbulence. And usually, if you're looking out the window and you have these puffy cumulus clouds and like cauliflower-shaped clouds, once you get above the base, that turbulence goes away. Inside the cloud, it can be very bumpy. Now, mechanical turbulence is when winds go across rough terrain. Think of a stream moving through rocks, boulders and things. You'll see the turbulence as the water swirls around. Air is a fluid. It does the same thing. If you're near rough terrain, especially mountains, you can get some very rough weather because the air just spills over and rolls in different directions. And then there's something called clear air turbulence. This is a little trickier. This is up near jet stream levels, where the powerful jet stream winds also cause turbulence, but since it's clear, you really can't see it. So you have to be a little more careful up that high, but there are forecasts that are available. Plus, as pilots move along, they get reports from other aircraft. So maybe somebody's ahead of you by 10 or 15 miles. They say we're getting moderate turbulence. Your pilot will know that and know to slow down a little bit. So that's turbulence. Really not something you have to worry about in terms of it breaking the airplane. They're equipped to handle it. Keep your seatbelt fastened, because especially with some of this clear turbulence, you get up near a jet stream, it can really cause a drop in the airplane. And people have been injured because they didn't have their belts on. So just keep it on clearly. And there's no such thing, by the way, as an air pocket. It's just the winds slow a little bit, and the airplane drops a little bit to pick up the speed. Landing weather. All right, you got there smoothly. Maybe there's fog at the airport you're going to. So here's the next step. When you're in an airliner and they're going someplace where the weather's not good, below a certain amount of cloud cover, height, and visibility, they have to choose another airport somewhere that they can reach and get to with still 45 minutes of fuel remaining. So you have to be able to fly to the airport you want to land at, let's say Denver. Oh, the weather's too bad, we can't land here. We have to go someplace else. Okay, let's go down to Albuquerque. You have to be able to fly to that alternate airport where you're guaranteed good weather and still have 45 minutes of fuel on board. So that's why sometimes you're trying to get into Kennedy Airport or LaGuardia and the weather turns really bad, you wind up in Hartford. It's all because of the requirement to find a spot where the weather is good. So on landing, it's critical to know the visibility, because whether you can even land is determined by horizontal visibility. Yes, there are some aircraft and airports where you can have virtually automated full landings in 0-0 conditions, but for the most part, you need some horizontal visibility, usually on the order of a half mile and at least a couple of 100 feet from the base of the cloud down to the ground. So if you don't have that, you've got to go someplace else. Airliners cannot even make an approach if it's below what's called landing minimums at the airport. You also, again, need the wind's direction and the wind speed. Where does all this come from? There is a lot of information, again, produced by the National Weather Service, by local National Weather Service offices, observations that include winds and visibility and clouds and the type of precipitation. Forecasts for aviation are not like the ordinary forecasts. You're not going to hear tonight will be cloudy with a chance of rain. The aviation forecast will say at 8 p.m., the ceiling will be 2,000 feet, visibility is 7 miles, the winds will be southwest at 15 miles an hour. At 10 p.m., the ceiling will be 1,000 feet, the visibility 2 miles in light rain. It's very specific time-wise. It's a much more detailed, and the aviation forecasting is how I broke into this business in the Air Force. It's a much more difficult thing than just saying it'll be cloudy with a chance of rain today. So that's what goes into this whole thing. Weather, very critical for all aircraft, from single engine planes like I fly now to the big airliners. Pilots are trained and always have to be aware that the weather can change. You always have alternate options available. And all that combines to make for a safe and comfortable, and hopefully, for those of you a little nervous, a little more stress-free flight.